Well, welcome to our session today, Interactive Rubrics, providing consistent and quality feedback in Blackboard courses. My name is Jason Rohde, and I'm the Assistant Director of the Faculty Development and Instructional Design Center at Northern Illinois University. And we're really pleased to have you with us today for this session, whether those of you that are participating live, we're really excited to have you with us today live, but also those of you viewing the archive, whether it be online or in a mobile fashion. We're glad to have you asynchronously as well. So today, this workshop in particular, I'm really excited about because it represents a fantastic new approach to and some great tools for you as educators when it comes to using Blackboard and conducting assessments in Blackboard. And so we're going to talk about some interactive rubrics and how you can use the Interactive Rubrics tool in Blackboard. We're going to take a look at some sample interactive rubrics. And then I want to highlight the steps for creating an interactive rubric inside of Blackboard. And how do you go about applying that then to an assignment for grading? So I want to kind of walk through that process and kind of explain it, and then actually go into a Blackboard course and actually demonstrate how you would use a rubric to grade, as well as how might you take a rubric that you've created in Blackboard and then share it with others. So we're actually going to, in a little bit here, go into Blackboard, and I'll kind of walk through that process to give you a good idea of what's possible. So with that, thinking a little bit about rubrics, what is a rubric before we actually go in and start looking at how we would create one? A rubric is a tool, very simply, that lists evaluation criteria for an assignment. So how is a particular assignment going to be graded? And I should say more broadly, not just an assignment, the type of tool called an assignment in Blackboard, but any type of an assessment in Blackboard. And rubrics are really helpful because they help students organize their efforts to know exactly what do they need to do to meet the requirements for an assignment. And often, we get the question from students, what's expected? That's often the question students have, and a rubric is a great tool in communicating to the student what exactly is expected. And faculty can use rubrics to explain their evaluations to students. So it really eliminates a lot of the ambiguity of, okay, why did I receive a particular score or a grade? As faculty, if you use rubrics, it can really clarify that for your students. As we think more about kind of the structure of what a rubric is, if you're not familiar with a rubric, it's simply made up of rows and columns. Just a simple table that specifies criteria for how an assessment is graded. And the rows correspond to the various criteria of an assignment, so you can have as many or few criteria for how you're going to be judging the quality of an assignment. And then the columns within the table represent the levels of achievement expressed for each of the criterion. And so you basically spell out what are these different levels of achievement and what constitutes different levels of performance. And then within the table then, there's a description and typically a point value for each cell in the rubric, and that defines how the evaluation will take place and really what the score of an assignment is. So it's very clear to the students, how are they being assessed and how does that criteria, how does that break down? So here's a sample rubric just to show you again. As I mentioned, there are a series of columns. So you have these columns here, and you'll notice the heading here of criteria. So for each of these rows, this represents a criterion that this faculty member specified. And then these columns that you see then represent different levels of achievement. So here we have below expectations, proficient, and exemplary. So for this particular criterion of promptness and initiative, these are really the three different levels of performance having to do with that particular criterion. And in this example, the student would receive 0 points for a below expectation performance on this criterion, 1 point if it's proficient, and 2 points if it would be deemed to be an exemplary demonstration of that criterion. So I think we kind of get the gist here of this is all a rubric is. It's just simply a table. And rubrics are nothing new to education. What's new, relatively new, is that in Blackboard now you can create these rubrics very easily and associate them with assignments and then use them to grade and provide feedback to the students. So why rubrics? I think it's obvious, but I don't want to leave anything unspoken as far as why do we use rubrics. Really, we look for the benefits of consistent evaluations of students' work. So you have a set standard that all students are evaluated against. It provides clarification for why a student received a particular score. So they can see that clarification. It's very obvious to them, where could they have improved. You can also use rubrics to tie the evaluation criteria to course or program objectives. And this is really the bigger picture of assessment. When we look at the overall objectives for a course or a program, you can take some of those objectives and think about how does that particular assignment, how are the students meeting some of those objectives. And through the use of rubrics, you can tie your criteria directly to the objectives that you have for your course or your program. Just speaking from my own experience, grading with rubrics is a huge time savings because for all of these reasons stated previously, it just saves you an enormous amount of time and helps you to be more fair, frankly, in how you're grading because you have a set rubric of standards that you're going to use each and every time you grade for each student within that particular assignment. So in Blackboard, as I mentioned, we now can have these interactive rubrics that we're going to be taking a look at here today. And so in addition to regular assignments, which in Blackboard, that's where you have students submit their work electronically using the assignment tool. This interactive rubric tool and these rubrics that you create with it can be associated with a lot of different kinds of assessments. Everything from short answer test questions, gradable blogs, journals, and wikis, as well as discussion board threads and forums. So basically, just about any kind of assessment that you can now do in Blackboard, you can associate a rubric with it. And that's kind of what we're going to take a look at today. How do we do that? So inside of a Blackboard course, here's a screenshot of a Blackboard course, the typical course menu. And down underneath in the control panel area, underneath Course Tools, when you click Course Tools, this menu expands, and there's an option down here for rubrics. And so this is where you would go then to manage the rubrics within your course. So here you can see I've already clicked that. And then here on the right, this is the kind of the rubrics area, the rubrics tool that we see. And you notice I have some sample rubrics that I've already imported into Blackboard. One of the neat things you can do in Blackboard is you can either create a rubric, and here you can see the Create Rubric button, or you can choose to import a previously created rubric. And Blackboard has begun collecting rubrics that other faculty have created and shared for different kinds of assessments. This tool also makes it possible for you to create a rubric in Blackboard and then to share that with colleagues, to share that with others. You're able to, you notice there's an export button here. So you could take any of the rubrics once you have them in Blackboard. You could check a box for that rubric, and then you could go up and click this export button. And this would allow you to, in essence, export out that rubric in a Blackboard formatted file that someone else could then import into their course and make use of. So when you think of some of the examples of maybe at the program level, standardizing some of the assessment criteria and rubrics that are used for assessing certain kinds of assignments, those rubrics could be created once and then shared across the department or across the program, and all the faculty could use the same standards, if you will, in assessing student learning. So there's a lot of really powerful applications for use of this rubrics tool. One of the really neat things you can then do with the rubrics, and it's great to have rubrics and for students to be able to see that these are, see what that criteria is, but really where the power comes in is when you grade using a rubric. And so this is an example of a discussion forum using the grading feature where I've, in essence, clicked the option to grade the forum. And so there's a couple of contributions here from this student. And what you see, if you set up a rubric and you associate it with a discussion board, for example, here you can see that what's called inline grading using a rubric. So I can actually go through criterion by criterion, and I can select the level of performance simply by clicking a little radio button, and I can provide feedback for that particular criterion as well for the student. And so a rubric is really a tool for grading and doing the actual grading in Blackboard as much as it is communicating to the students in advance what those expectations are. And I'll demonstrate some of this when we get into Blackboard in just a moment. We've been collecting some resources and continue to add to our resource listing in regards to rubrics in Blackboard in this new rubrics tool. And here on this slide you see the URL for our Interactive Rubrics page on the Teaching with Blackboard site. And you can go here to see, we actually have links to some different tutorials kind of going through some of these steps that I'm gonna show today. We have these recorded, so if you just wanted to get a reminder, how do I create a grading rubric, you can just view that tutorial. Also, we have got links to where you can find shared rubrics from other higher ed institutions. I mentioned that Blackboard has been collecting rubrics and samples that other faculty have shared. You can access those, download them, and import them into your own Blackboard course if you wish. This page is also where we'll post a link to the archive of this online workshop today. So that'll also be available here in the future for you to access as well. So at this point, I figured I would go into and do a demo in Blackboard. And before I do, I'll just pause and see it. If anyone does have any questions at this point, just about rubrics in general, you can feel free to ask those at this point, whether at the text chat area or raise your hand. What I thought I would do is, if there are no questions at this point, is transition into Blackboard and kind of walk through a few of these steps. We'll take a look at, first and foremost, creating a rubric, kind of show you how easy it is to create one. And then how do you take that rubric once you've created it and add it to an assessment that you might have in a Blackboard course. So we can show that. I thought I'd also then show you how you grade using a rubric that has been assigned to a particular assessment. And then finally, how do you go about exporting the rubric out so that it can be reused in another course. So if there aren't any questions, we'll go ahead and move into our demo. And what I'd like you to do to kind of optimize your experience would be to go ahead and maximize your window. So by clicking if you haven't already done so, if you click in the upper right corner, if you're on, for example, a Windows system, you'll see this little square in the upper right corner. You can click on that and that will maximize your screen so that once I go into the demo, you'll be able to see that listed there. So with that, let me go ahead and I'm going to share my screen, and so just momentarily you will see my screen, and right now you should see my computer where I'm logged into Blackboard. And if you could just in a text chat or maybe just give me a check mark letting me know that you're able to see my screen. I just want to make sure I'm coming through and you're able to, in fact, see my screen. Bill can, Isabel can, and Joanne as well. Wonderful. So I'm logged into one of our training courses where I have some rubrics set up already and some sample assessments. So first and foremost, when it comes to creating a rubric, just as a reminder, you would go to down here under Course Tools, and I'm actually going to reduce the scrolling, I'm going to collapse up the menu right here, so we can focus here on the control panel. So I clicked on Course Tools, and then down under Course Tools you have this link for rubrics. So this is where you will go. Now I've already pre-populated this rubric section with some sample rubrics. And these actually happen to be some of the sample rubrics that other faculty from other institutions have shared that Blackboard has available on its rubric sharing site. And after the demo here, I'll share with you the link to where you can download these sample rubrics and actually import them directly into your course. So one example here, a grading rubric for discussion boards. And there's a description here. And What's nice about using and actually importing in some previously built rubrics rather than starting from scratch is you can just see some different samples. So here I have this rubric that I'm going to go ahead and edit. And when you go to edit it, then you can really see how it's structured. So obviously you give it a title, you can add a description, and then as far as rubric detail, we have a list of criteria. So each criterion is a row. And I can notice I can add rows or columns, and then the levels of achievement are these columns here. So there's, by default here, we have 3 different levels of achievement. You could have as many or as few as you'd like, and then you specify for each of these a description, a textual description of what constitutes a below expectations posting, demonstration of promptness initiative, and then how many points is that worth. So you can put those values in as part of the rubric, and as long as you haven't yet graded with the rubric, you can go in and make changes to it. I'm going to go back to the rubrics area here. Here's a sample grading rubric for grading blogs, and when I go to try to edit this rubric, you'll notice that I can't edit the values because this particular rubric has been used in the past to grade within this course. And so once you grade with a rubric, you can't edit it because it's assuming that you don't want to go back and change that criteria after you've already graded with it. You can, however, duplicate rubrics, copy them, and reuse them, and so forth. So back to rubrics. So as I mentioned, you may want to download some of the sample rubrics and import those into Blackboard. And the way you would do that, you download the files from the site I'll share, and then you would simply go to Import Rubric, and you would browse your computer for that file. Okay, I'm not going to obviously do that. For the sake of time, we'll just stick with what we have here. But that's how you would import those in once you have them. To create a new rubric from scratch, and that's what we'll do here. We'll go ahead, we'll click the Create Rubric button, and I'm going to give it a name. My sample rubric, and the description goes here. All right, so we're just kind of getting started setting this up. All right, so it gives you by default the beginnings of a rubric. So notice I have 3 levels of achievement: novice, competent, and proficient. Again, maybe I don't like these. Maybe you do and you want to stick with them. It's totally up to you. If you wanted to change these labels for the levels of achievement, you could simply click on this little double down arrow. It's called an action link button, and then you could go ahead and edit this column. So I could say, below satisfactory. All right, and this could be maybe this needs improvement, and then maybe this will be acceptable. Again, I'm just making up these levels of achievement. It's totally up to you however you want to frame these, and you can have as many or a few of these as you wish. If you wanted to just have a below satisfactory and an acceptable, I could actually go in, delete this column, and now I just have 2 levels of achievement. Again, totally up to you. To put that column back, I would simply go in and add a column. I would call it, let's say, approaching expectations. And I'm just making up another level of achievement. And then I could actually move this over. I could say reorder this. I could say approaching expectations. I want to move the approaching expectations here to the middle. I'd select it, click this little arrow to move it to the left, and hit submit. And I'm going to hit the submit button here to just refresh my page. So here's my sample rubric. Let me get back in here. And I apologize, my system here is running a little slow, so we'll go back in and make a second one. Rubric sample 2. All right, so here it is. So again, we have these levels of achievement. Then you also have these criteria. So we have, again, by default, will show you, give you some samples that you could just rename. If I wanted to delete one of these, I could again delete the row, and now I just have 3 rows. It will default to a percentage here. I like to use a point value. And you can either set it up to be points or points range. So points is, I think, the most straightforward to the students. You know, if you demonstrate this level of achievement for this criterion, it's worth this many points. And that way you could say, 0 points, 1 point, 2 points, or so forth. So you simply just type in your criteria, add your rows and columns, and when you're finished, then you click the Submit button, and you have your rubric. All right, so here we go. I've got my 2 rubrics here, and now I'm ready to do something with them. Okay, so now you can, as I mentioned, export these out. So we created this rubric, and I want to share it with somebody. If you check the box to the left of the name of the rubric, you can then go up and you can export that rubric. And you can either export it, which is to the local computer, which means you take a copy of it and you save the file in your system that you could then email to someone. But you can also put it in what's called the content collection. And this is kind of an internal file area that you have in Blackboard that you can then share with other NIU faculty members, share it within a department. It makes it real easy to access shared content. So you could put that rubric directly into a location in the content system. That's how you get the file out, and then you can put it somewhere else to import it again. So now I have these rubrics set up, and I want to actually go ahead and do some grading with this. So I happen to have a rubric that is a grading rubric for writing assignments right here. And if we go in and edit it, you can see that we have some different criteria specific to a written type of an assignment. Again, this is one of these sample rubrics that's been created. So let's say that within our assessments area, I have this assignment. It's a book review paper that I want the students they're going to submit. And if we go in and take a look at the parameters of this assignment, so it's using the assignment tool. It's just pretty standard. We have the title, a description. Now under grading, you'll notice that any kind of assignment, you have the option now to add a rubric. So when you go to add rubric, it will walk you through either selecting an existing rubric or to create a new one, or create a version, modify one that you have, make a new one, but modify it based on a previously existing rubric that you might have. So we're going to just select one that we have in Blackboard. So we check that option. Here are my rubrics, and again, I want to check the box for the grading rubric for writing assignments, because that happens to be the rubric that is closely associated with this activity. It's going to ask me, do I want to assign the rubric's maximum points as the points possible? So whatever point values you put in the rubric for the various levels of achievement for the different criteria, Blackboard can make sure to update the points possible to match that. Now I had already set this assignment up to be worth 10 points. That happens to be the same point value that the rubric is worth, so that's now listed here, the same 10 points. So now you see under associated rubrics, we have the particular rubric is now associated with this assignment. It is set up to be used for grading, and notice there is a second option used for secondary evaluation, which we're not going to get into today. This is really important here. Show rubric to students. By default, the students won't see this rubric yet at all as far as associated with the assignment. What you can do is you can choose to show them the rubric with the scores that they receive, which is what I do. I like the students to be able to see that. What scores did they earn? There is a yes without rubric scores, meaning they see the criteria, the levels of achievement, but they don't necessarily see the scores that they received. I don't see a lot of value. I think that's a little counterproductive to show them the criteria, but not how you graded them using the criteria. So I would say that you either select either yes with rubric scores, or after grading means that they don't see the rubric, but after you do the grading, then it shows up there. I've personally always chosen just yes with rubric scores so that it's always there. Even before they complete this assignment, they can go in, they can see the assignment in the description, and they can see the rubric that's going to be associated with it. So that's the one I always pick. That's just been my preference. Then you have just the regular, the other features or settings that you have with whatever the assignment happens to be. That you would set that as you wish. So here you can see now we have the rubric. Here's the little check mark that it's now going to be available, and I simply now need to click the Submit button. So now I've just associated a rubric to this assignment. So what my students will see in essence when they come in to submit this assignment and they go to the assignment, here they see the name of the assignment, the instructions. Because I associated the rubric and let the students see it with the scores, they can click the View Rubric button. It pops open a new window, and the students actually can see, here's the rubric, here's the point values associated to the various levels of performance. And this is what's called the grid view. There's also something called list view, which breaks down more into what Blackboard refers to as the inline grading mode for the faculty, where they can see just the criteria and then the levels of performance, or you can also see the descriptions, and if you put any feedback in as the grader for a given criteria, that'll show up. So attaching that rubric then to the assignment, the students can see that, and it's a great way of communicating what your expectations are for the students. So that kind of gives you a preview of what that's like. So that's an assignment. Now how would you do this with let's say a discussion board, just to give you another example. So I'm going to go to the discussion board here in our Blackboard course, and we have a forum called Expectations. And so I'm going to go in and edit this discussion board, this forum, and as I take a look at the forum, I have things set up. I have it set up right now to be a graded forum. So I have enabled that it be graded, that we would grade the discussion forum, that it would be worth 10 points possible, but I don't have a rubric associated with it yet. So I would go in now and I would, again, select a rubric. I happen to have a rubric for grading discussion boards, so I'll check that rubric option, click the Submit button, click OK. And again, I want to go in and let the student see it with the scores and click the Submit button. So as you think about getting the rubrics prepared for this and kind of associated in the course, there's really a two-step process. You need to create the rubrics, whether it be you create them from scratch in the course tools. You would go to course tools and go to rubrics, and you either create them from scratch or you import them in previous rubrics. And really then the second phase is for the assignments that you want to grade using a rubric, you basically then assign a rubric to that assignment. So if you're already using assignments in Blackboard or other types of assessments, discussion boards, you simply go in, edit that type of assessment, and associate the rubric with it. And so now, then we get to the fun part, which is the grading. So we want to provide some feedback to the students. So how do we grade using the rubric? Well, let's go into, we'll start with the discussion. So let's go to the discussion, back to the discussion board. And I mentioned this expectations forum that I have here. So I'm going into the forum, and because I've turned on grading, I have the grade forum button. And what this allows me to do is when I click on that button, it will break down a listing of all my students, and the number of posts. I can see the number of posts that they've made. So here I have Louisa Alcott. She's made 2 posts, and when I click the grade button, I can go in and I can grade her contributions. So what Blackboard does is it gives me a sort of just her contributions to this particular forum, and then I see the ability here to then give her a score, to edit her grade. So when I click Edit Grade, the Edit Grade button, because I have a rubric associated with this assessment, here is that rubric, the grading rubric for discussion boards. And if I click on it, when I get ready to give her a score, rather than just entering in a score, here is my rubric broken down. Criterion 1, promptness and initiative. Here are those 3 levels of achievement. And I can choose to show descriptions, which is a great reminder for me, okay, what am I looking for again? What did I say I would be looking for in grading this? So I can be reminded just by clicking the check mark, okay, oh yes, what is a below expectation as far as promptness, or what's exemplary? I can see that, and I can select the select that option for that particular criterion. So I can go through and based on her performance, proficient, maybe the exemplary, and below expectations on the critical thinking analysis. Now there is a general feedback area as well, where you can put in some general comments about that goes within the rubric at the bottom of the rubric for the students to see. So you can provide additional feedback there. You also you have this option to show feedback for each of the criterion. And so for each one, there you can put specific feedback in for each of those. So you can get very detailed in the level of feedback if you wish. Or you can choose to simply select the levels of achievement for the different criteria and maybe give some general feedback. So then we click the Submit button, and based on how we responded on the rubric, the score gets put in there for us. Then there's also this general feedback. This is typically where I put the feedback for my students. Nice job. So this is where I would type that in. I like to put it here so that the students see this. If you put the feedback right here in this general feedback rather than in the feedback in the rubric, when they go to view their grades and they see their score, they'll see these comments at the top level right there with the score. If you put the overall feedback inside the rubric, here they have to click on the score, go into the rubric, and then see the feedback. It's just been my preference. I like to give them some feedback initially right when they go to my grades. And so that's why I put the overall feedback, I put it here. And then once finished, I just click the Save Grade button. And now I've graded Louisa Alcott's her discussion. And here's that general feedback. I can go back to view the rubric, and here I can see how I graded her. And she will see this as well. This is basically what she'll see when she clicks on the rubric. And then if I were to put feedback at the bottom of the rubric, it would show up down here directly inside of the rubric as it was graded. So that's grading a discussion. Let's take a look at how you grade an assignment. And then I'll quickly log in as Louisa Alcott, and we'll take a look and see what does it look like from a student's perspective. So let me go to the Grade Center as the instructor. And so here I'm in the Grade Center. One of the things you can do in Blackboard is collapse down the menu on the left to give yourself a little more space here to grade. And so here's Louisa Alcott's attempt. And to keep things simple, to show you the example, I'm just going to kind of regrade, if you will, an attempt that she has here. So I'm going to go to view her details. We'll go in and we'll view her attempt at this assignment. So here was the assignment that she submitted. She stayed up all night working on it, and I had previously given her a 10 out of 10, but I hadn't given her a breakdown using the rubric. So I'm going to go to view the rubric, and here you can see now I'm going to be grading. I'm not in an inline mode, meaning it pops open in a new window, and I can go ahead and give her a score, based on, here's how she earned those 10 out of 10 points. And again, I could provide feedback if I wanted for the different levels of performance. There's also an overall feedback within the rubric. And just for kicks, I'm going to go back in and I'll put some feedback here inside the rubric. that you can see what that looks like from a student's perspective. And say, please see rubric for more details, for more feedback, more specific. All right, so we'll hit, we'll save and exit out of the Grade Center now. So we just graded a test, or an assignment I should say, and then a discussion board. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and get ready to log out as Louisa Alcott. So let me log out of Blackboard, and let me log back in as her. So I'm logging in as a student, and I'm going to go into the course, the Basics of Online Learning course. And when Louisa goes to see her grades, so here are the different assignments, and we'll start with the discussion, the expectations discussion. So this is the discussion. Here's the score, and again, remember I put those comments at the kind of at the top level outside of the rubric. So those comments are visible right here. And when she clicks on View Rubric, it pops open. Here it shows her this particular, for the discussion board, how she was graded. So it's very, very clear to her how she performed. The book review, which was the assignment that she submitted, again, here's those overall comments. I say, please see rubric for more information. When she clicks the View Rubric button, that opens up, and here's that feedback that I put directly inside of the rubric. So you can provide feedback at different levels of specificity. I didn't put the feedback for each of the criteria, but those would appear right here had I put those inside of the rubric. Now the student can also click on the score. So if I pick on that discussion board, for example, when we click on the score, that pops open, and from a student's perspective, it shows them, here were your posts, and they can view the rubric as well from here. So it just gives them another view of that, and they can kind of see that, and then again, here's the overall general feedback. Likewise for the assignment, if we go back to My Grades as the student, we're going to go to that book review and click on the score. This takes them just to a slightly different view, which has the details of the assignment. When was it submitted, that overall feedback, and then the same View Rubric button is here. If I would have attached back to the student maybe a document, a revised document with comments in the document, and some of you may do that from time to time. If I were to do that, that link would show up here underneath instructor feedback. So that, in a nutshell, is use of the rubrics, grading with rubrics, and then I mentioned how you export one out. You simply check the rubric and click the export button within the course. Are there any questions as far as what I've demoed at this point? You have specific questions, something you're wondering that I didn't cover, feel free to type it in the text chat or raise your hand. I'll end out of the screen sharing for the moment. Unless there are more questions, I can always pop back into Blackboard. But let me just put up once again the link that we have to the Interactive Rubrics resources. So if you'd like a nice step-by-step guide to getting started with rubrics, this would be a great place to go. Great question, Joanne. Can the student see the rubric before grading has occurred? It all depends, Joanne, on the setting for when you attach the rubric to the assignment. So let me go back in to Blackboard. So let me pop Blackboard back open here. Just take me a moment. We'll go back into screen sharing. And I'm going to log out as the student and back in as the instructor. And let's go in and take a look back at our course. So we'll use that assignment, that book review assignment, as an example. So if we go back in and edit the assignment, where you were attaching the rubric to the assignment where it says show rubric to students. If you choose to say yes, yes without scores, or after grading, these options here really specify whether or not the students will see it before it's graded. If you say no, it really is more for you to use, but the students won't see it at all. If you say after grading, then they won't see it until after you grade it. So it is a preference. It's up to you, Joanne, how you want to make that available to the students. I prefer to let them see the rubric up front so they know exactly how they're going to be evaluated. But again, that's up to you. Great question. Okay, if there are other questions, be sure to type them in. Let me know. I do want to point out a couple of resources you might want to download. We do have a rubrics quick guide. So on the rubrics resource page on the Teaching with Blackboard site, there is a rubrics quick guide. It's just a 2-page printable PDF that kind of walks through the step-by-step for what I demonstrated today. So if you're the kind of person that likes a checklist, or to have something printed that you can put up next to your computer to remind you when you go to use the tool, you can go ahead and download this rubrics quick guide. We also, I mentioned where you can find shared rubrics, and the rubrics that I showed today actually came directly from Blackboard's rubric sharing site, and it's simply blackboard.com/rubrics. So if you go there, you can actually go, and there's a section where when you scroll down, where this is where you can download different rubrics, and Blackboard continues to add new rubrics. They're looking for faculty who are willing to share rubrics they've created. They have information on this site as to how you can share a rubric you've created with others. And there's an option for each rubric to click. You can click download now. So when you go there, you click that link for that particular rubric. If it looks interesting and maybe something that you'd like to modify for your own use, you can click the download now button, and your browser will prompt you, your computer, to download the file. It'll be a Blackboard formatted zip file, meaning it's a file that you can take, you can import then into Blackboard. So it's not a file you can open on your computer and manipulate. You have to first put it back into Blackboard. So you can download the rubrics, and I'd recommend downloading as many as look interesting. You can always delete them later from your course if you don't want to see them any longer. So blackboard.com/rubrics, that's where you can find great rubric examples. A couple of quick plugs here. If you'd like to participate in other online programs that we have coming up, be sure to stay up to date with our upcoming programs that we have on our site. The Teaching with Blackboard site that I mentioned, this is where you can find a lot of great information about not just rubrics, but other types of assessment tools. To find the rubrics, you just go to niu.edu/blackboard, and you can click on Assessing Learners, and you'll find a rubrics link right there. Or if you just search the NIU website for Blackboard rubrics, the page will come up. So either way, you can find the information easily online. I mentioned that we're archiving this session, so this recording will be available and will be added to our program archive page on the Faculty Development website. If you go to our site and you click on Archives in the red bar at the top, that'll take you to our program archives, where to date we have over 50 archived online programs available, and you can view them. You can click the link to view it online, or if you like to, if you're a podcast user, you like to be on the go and access content, you can subscribe to our podcast in iTunes, and then you can access the episodes that way. If you have a mobile device that has iTunes on it, you can actually search the device for NIU Faculty Development, and you'll find our program archives, and you can access them for free from your mobile device. So, and also if you're on Facebook or Twitter, please follow us where you can stay up to date on everything that is going on faculty development-wise at NIU. The last thing I want to share with everyone, if you don't mind, is I'm going to push out a quick evaluation link, and if you could just take a moment to share with us feedback on the workshop today, we'd appreciate, as we always look to improve our program and really value your feedback. So just in a moment, you'll see a box opening up the evaluation form will open, and you can, it'll load here, and then you can just complete this here in the window. Thanks, Bill, for the feedback. I'd love to, excited to see you're going to give rubrics, giving them a head start so they know what their goals are. Absolutely. So with that, thank you so much, everyone, for joining us today. With that, that's all I had to share with you. I'm happy to stick around for a few more minutes if you have questions. Otherwise, I'm going to stop the recording at this point, and we'll look forward to hearing perhaps in the future how you're using rubrics. So good luck, have a great day, and we hope to see you back again for an online workshop in the future.